The Democratic Alliance and EFF have written to National Assembly Speaker asking her to put the Phala Phala matter back on the agenda after new information emerged from SARS this week. Siviwe has signalled that the matter would be handled in a plenary where political parties would make declarations. Now, last year, Parliament rejected the adoption of a Section 89 report that could have paved the way for President Cyril Ramaphosa to be impeached. Let's get the thoughts of the DA's Chief Whip Siviwe Gwarube this moment on this particular matter. Siviwe, good morning and thank you very much for your time. So we understand that you've written to the Speaker to bring back the Phala Phala matter in light of those recent developments around SARS inability to locate documentation relating to the declaration of that $580,000 by Mr. Hassim, if indeed it does exist. What do you want to see happening in Parliament on this matter this time around?
So, Mfundo, good morning, and good morning to your viewers. So, Mfundo, I mean, if you will recall, at the end of last year, the matter was brought before Parliament under the Section 89 panel process, which we had. And the ANC at the time used every trick in the book to get the matter not considered by saying that, look, I mean, the president can't necessarily be taken through an impeachment inquiry process because he is in the process of getting the report overturned, which the Concourt has recently come back and said and denied him direct access to the Constitutional Court. So what we are saying is that having pursued the Section 89 panel route and the ANC having used their majority to vote down an impeachment inquiry process, it leaves Parliament in a situation where we have never, as an institution that is meant to have oversight over the executive, actually looked into this matter. Every single opportunity or every single attempt to hold the president account to this, to obtain answers from him, has been met with opposition from the ANC and the president himself. So what we are saying is that bring the motion to vote on an ad hoc committee. We would like an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc committee is a multi-party body that has the powers to subpoena ministers, that has powers to subpoena government entities and the like, so that we can ask the relevant questions, so that we can probe SARS further about some of the findings that they've had. We think that it is damning what we have seen this week coming out of SARS, saying that they can't locate the documents or they can't locate the declaration. So, Mfundo, the problem here is that Parliament is repeating the same mistakes that were identified in the Zondo Commission, that we are not doing our constitutional obligation of holding the executive to account if we let this matter go. So we are not letting it go. We want him to answer, and government ministers who may be implicated.
I just want to take you back to the Section 89 since you touched on it. In hindsight, do you not regret pursuing or perhaps not considering Brett Herron's proposal that perhaps you were supposed to pause it for a little bit, allow the president to go to court and challenge that report, and then perhaps it wouldn't have been closed, and at a later stage you would have been allowed to proceed, given that there's so much that's now coming out?
Not at all. Look, I mean, Mfundo, anybody who, has followed Parliament closely will remember, I would like to draw your attention back to the Zuma years that the ANC likes to term as the 9 wasted years. Even when it was blatantly clear that the former president had abused money that was public money for the upgrading of his personal home, the ANC voted to protect him. This is what the ANC does. It does not matter what the objective facts are. It doesn't matter whether we had delayed the matter. The reality is that the process that the court follows versus what Parliament ought to do are completely two different processes. And we ought to always remember that we've got an obligation that is separate from the executive, that is separate from the judiciary, and we've got to make sure that we do our job. The ANC was always going to shield the president from going through an impeachment inquiry, which for me was always odd, because of course, if the president has nothing to answer, then what you want is for him to be able to unpack his story. And for me, that committee would have been useful. But we've always said that an ad hoc committee is absolutely crucial for Parliament. And I'm really interested to see, Mfundo, when the matter comes to before the Assembly, is the ANC going to be able to justify once again in front of South Africans why it is that they do not want their president probed on a matter of this scale. Because we're dealing here with a head of state that has this dark cloud hanging over his head.
But I'm sure you've already heard at least the spokesperson of the president stating that whatever developments are there around Mr. Hasim, according to him, have no bearing on the president's innocence in this whole matter, according to them.
Look, yeah, I mean, I think that the vote that we'll be having in Parliament would not be determining the president's innocence or not, but it would be saying that as Parliament, we've got a duty on behalf of the people of South Africa to ask the questions. Was that to ask the Correctional Services and Constitutional Ronald Lambula's department what his role was. Ask the SAPS what their role was. Why was the Presidential Protection Unit used as the president's personal debt collection agency, essentially, across the border? This is a massive issue that just transcends just the president's culpability, but also has the potential to implicate a number of government departments. So, again, I mean, the ANC should not conflate what the vote is going to be about in the next coming weeks. The vote is not about whether or not we're voting to determine whether the president is innocent or guilty. We are voting to say Parliament has a duty to investigate, to satisfy themselves that they've asked the relevant questions, that they've done their job as the body that's meant to have an oversight over the executive.
And then legally, are you pursuing this matter legally as well? Because it seems the president hasn't brought a matter after that one was dismissed in the Concord. He hasn't perhaps taken it to the Western Cape High Court as yet. So legally, are you exploring any ways in which perhaps you can force him to challenge that report so that maybe there can be other parties that defend it? Is it even possible?
Look, I mean, it's, obviously we'll have to see what he does. It is interesting to me that he actually has perhaps no appetite to take it to the High Court since he was denied direct access to the Concord. But it also says to me that perhaps even his his application to access the Concord directly was somehow, a filibustering tactic at the time when the matter was before Parliament. He wanted to essentially create the impression that he was challenging the report. He doesn't seem to be in any big rush now, because I think the ANC believes that they've successfully buried this.
So meaning he was kicking for touch, according to you. He was merely kicking for touch, which would then give the ANC a reason to support him or reject that report, because they would have all then legitimately said, our president is challenging in court. We don't see the need to actually adopt it at this moment.
Quite right. And so we will continue asking Parliament to do its job. And many people may say, look, you don't have the numbers in Parliament, even as opposition put together. Why do you bother? But I do want to say this, that we are elected public representatives, and we must never, ever be deterred by the fact that the ANC has numbers and they'll always essentially vote to protect the executive instead of holding them to account. Because everything we do, we are setting a precedent. And I have every reason to believe that, firstly, South Africans need to know how the ANC MPs are voting in Parliament, which is a matter of public record. And that's why it's important to bring these things to the floor of Parliament. Number two, this is precedent being set. In 2024, when the ANC comes back with a reduced majority, we would have set these things a priority precedent in Parliament to show that it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're the head of state or not. If you've broken the law, then as the legislature in the country, we've got to do our job of making sure that you've acted in accordance to your oath of office.
Siviwe, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was DA Chief Whip Siviwe Gwarube.